Welcome to the Friendly Critique. The critiques here are designed to be fun, helpful, and professional, but never harsh. They are just one person's opinion, and I recommend you obtain multiple opinions on your photography and consider having a collection of your work reviewed so that you can see trends and themes that are strengths or areas for future growth. Enjoy your journey with photography. I'm honored that I can play a part in your journey, and you in mine. Have a great day. I met Anna about 2 years ago at a photography workshop that I gave and presentation in the Louisiana Photographic Society. And just about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago, I gave a photo walk in Louisiana on a swamp tour. And Anna participated in that as well. And we were lucky to see, even though it's wintertime and usually they're hibernating, we were lucky to see quite a number of alligators. So it was a really great day. So that's the origins of this picture. And Anna, if you are on the line and you want to unmute yourself and talk about it even more, you're more than welcome to do so. So one of the things that I love about this image, and it's always nice if you can do it, is you've captured two subjects in the same image. That's always just ups it a level, right? You know, it's nice when we get one thing, but it's extra cool when we can get two. And they were two that are in kind of the same position, so it gives a little bit of rhythm to the image, and I really like that. I also like that you've got both in focus. The eyes of both are in focus. And I can tell you from being on the boat, that was a little bit of a challenging thing because we were actually quite close to them. And your depth of field can sometimes get shallower and shallower the closer you become to an animal or your subject. And so you use the right settings to get both of these eyes in focus. The light is also really, really pretty, and you got a nice reflection in these alligators. So Anna, I really like the way you processed it. You put a very subtle, very, very subtle darker vignette. It's one of those vignettes that you can barely notice, and I always like that style of vignette as opposed to the really, really kind of obnoxious, vignettes that sometimes you see. It looks like a high school picture from the 1980s. So I really like this very subtle vignette. And what that vignette does is it takes my eye away from the edges of the image and really helps it focus more on the center. The other thing that you did well, and I'm not sure if you did this in post or if this was just the light, but you really got my eye to where it needs to be. And if you've listened to previous critiques and even some of the webinar classes that I've done, I talk about the fact that your eye is drawn to the brightest thing first and then the darkest things. And where there's high contrast, for example, white against black, that is where your eye gravitates to the very most. And so without a doubt, if you're all looking at this image right now, you can see that your eyes probably go right here pretty quickly, right? They might go to the eye and then go to these wonderful teeth. There's a lot of contrast here between light and dark. And then it probably goes along this jawline and then over to this guy over here. So I really like that. I like that you got the reflection in there, but how you processed it and or how it was out of the camera, these reflections are just a little bit darker, which lets me notice them, but then pulls my eye right back up here where it should be. So I really like what you did with this image, and it was also just great to see you again in person, Anna. I hope to be back soon. So anyway, thanks for a great day with that. I love this image. I also, by the way, love the way you cropped it with more of a pano style crop as opposed to the traditional rectangular style. You lopped off the top or bottom a little bit to give it more of that pano feel. Really nice way to crop it. And it keeps it within the rule of thirds with this pair of alligators up on this third, and then the reflections down on this third here. If we were to put a tic-tac-toe grid across the page, those work really, really well. So nice job on that. I really like that a lot. All right, so let's go on to the next one here. And I think this is another one by Anna. Oh yeah, I remember this moment. So it's late in the day and we're in this boat in this swamp in southern Louisiana. And the light is coming through, if you can see my mouse here, the light is coming through the Spanish moss and these cypress trees. And this blue heron just walked right in at the right time. So he's in his natural environment, and then you've got this really pretty light. And Anna, I remember you capturing this moment because it was a fleeting moment, but it was really good opportunity for light. So I like how you have him lit. And again, this might have been right out of the camera from the light that I remember, but you may have lightened it up a little bit in post. If you did, it was smart to do that. But I really like it. You know, it's funny because I'm not usually a fan typically of subjects right in the middle, but I think in this case it really, really works because my eye comes to him and it goes in here with the light, and then I kind of want to know what's going on back here, and I actually really, really like it. And you also added an ever so faint vignette that just keeps my eye where it needs to be, but lets me know that there's other things going on in here. I really, really like that image. And I'm just going to look at the chat window to see if anybody has made any more comments or anything. Let me just take a quick look here. Bear with me a minute. I see a couple of chats here. Yes, I agree with you, Stephen. Great capture. Love the black and white. I agree. It's really nice to see some black and white wildlife. Joel, I think the composition works with this well. Yeah, and it's not a typical composition. And it, even so, his body's a little left of center, which gives it a little bit of kind of that off balance feel, but in a good way, because this darker stuff here is heavier and balances it out. But I really like it. I wouldn't change a thing with the composition. Yeah, I would like the head to turn to the camera a little more too. What's interesting, and I don't know that this is the case, but I wonder if the light would change if he turned his bill a little bit this way, if that same rim light would show up here, or if that would have changed. I don't know. I like that the processing job that you did with this. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next one. This one is Caroline. And Caroline, welcome to the group. I don't know if I've seen an image from you before, and I'm so grateful that you're here with us. So welcome. You photographed one of my favorite birds, an anhinga. And Caroline, I don't know if you're on the line, but you're welcome to unmute yourself and tell me a little bit about this picture if you're here.
I am here. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can. Hey, welcome.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
I am happy to have you here. It's great. So tell me a little bit about this.
I took this, I was in Florida, near Port Charlotte. We were at the Venice Rookery. And this gentleman posed for me very nicely, and I was able to get it. I'm just starting to get into, I just actually treated myself to an early Christmas present of a good camera. Before that, I just had a 50 times digital zoom Canon.
Oh yeah, yeah.
SLR, I think it's called.
Yes.
So that's what I captured it with.
Oh. So what camera did you get?
I got a Canon EOS 80.
Not is it a ADD? Not ADD.
Oh, 80, ADD, yes.
ADD, very good.
ADD too.
I think we all can relate to that a little bit. Well, congratulations on your purchase, and I'm a Canon girl as well, so so you're in good company with that. I think you're going to have a lot of fun, and it will forever be a journey. So so I love, right off the bat, I love that you did really, really smart choice on the focus. So a lot of times wildlife photographers will get started and they take a picture of something pretty, but they miss the focus point on the eye, and you got this, you nailed it, you got it in spades, and that's a tricky thing to do. And sometimes you can put your focus point right on that eye, and you'll probably learn more about the focus points in your camera as you go along, but he did a really good job getting that in really crisp, sharp focus, and I really like that a lot. I also love, he must have been, if I don't know if he was in, when did you you just got this, so you just shot this not long ago. So if this is some sort of breeding plumage or molting plumage, I quite can't remember on anhinga off the top of my head. If anybody else knows, let me know. But I love this. I love this. It's like Rasta anhinga. I love it.
Oh, thank you. I actually took it. I was in Florida. It was February a year ago, and so it was with my old camera.
Okay. Oh, great.
And yeah, it was at the Venice Rookery, and it was full of egrets and herons and squawking. And so yeah, so he there was I think one anhinga nest there.
Oh,
but
yeah.
he wasn't on the nest, but it's an island kind of in the middle of a pond.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
the
North
bushes.
of Fort Myers, right? North of Fort Myers?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. I haven't made it to Venice Rookery yet, but it's on my bucket list. Maybe this year I'll get down there. I don't know if you're involved in the Florida Camera Club Council or if you're doing anything with the Photo Fest in St. Augustine, but I'll be presenting and teaching at both of those festivals. The Florida Camera Club Council will be in Fort Myers, if I'm remembering correctly, and the other one is in St. Augustine. And I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but I want to say February and April. So anyway, keep those dates in mind, or keep those things in mind. Maybe we can connect. But I love this image, and I love, and someone mentioned it here. Joel says he loved that you got the catch light, and Darcy says the bird really pops out, and I agree with both of these folks. And let's see here. Martha, who I think, Martha, you're from Florida as well, as I remember correctly. She's like, congrats on the new camera. So I love that you got this little catch light, this little light in the eye. And I can get into this another time, but I can tell when photographers fake it and add it in Photoshop versus get it naturally. And you did a good job of getting that naturally. It just adds a little bit more dynamic and life to the bird. When they don't have a catch light, or when the eye is real dark without any sort of reflection in it, it can look like the bird is dead, or any animal. And so you did a nice job on that. Whether or not you intended to do that, your eye may have picked up on it and you clicked at the right time, but it's perfect. I also love that you've got a little bit of animation with the bill here. The bill is open a little bit, like he was squawking or doing something, probably commenting on that photographer, but you did a good job with that. The whole thing is in focus, which is awesome, and then your background is a little bit blurred out. I don't know if you've done a lot in post-processing yet. Have you done much with, Photoshop, or there's a variety of different tools out there. Have you done much with that?
I've done a little bit with Photoshop, mostly just cropping.
Okay.
I'm not, I don't, and it's just I've just played around with it. I don't really get, or I've had issues with trying to get the colors right. I seem to have to go too bright or too dark, and then I chicken out, and most of the time I just leave it as it was originally.
Yeah, it can be tricky, and your monitor calibration can sometimes play into that as well, especially these days. Not so much color changes. A lot of the monitors, I mean, there can be, don't get me wrong, but most of the monitors come out of the box fairly true to color, if not a little oversaturated, but the brightness of your monitor can sometimes play with your images too. It looks really, really bright on your screen, and then you go look at it somewhere else and it's really dark, or you print it. And that's a whole other kind of learning lesson unto itself. But one relatively simple thing that I think you could try with this image, and I'm going to, let me get rid of some of these images here, and I'm going to create a new one. Don't mind the stuff on my screen. I was working on something else earlier. I'm going to just take your image and show you a quick trick that might work well. So I've got just a blank layer here, and I'm going to paste your image on top of it. Whoops. There we go. And then I'm going to just create a duplicate of this real quickly so that we have a known good living underneath. So these are layers, and I just have 2 copies of your image stacked on top of each other right now. But in your Photoshop tools, there's a clone tool over here on the left, and it looks like a little clone stamp, and if I kind of click and hold, you'll see clone stamp tool. One of the things you might want to try, because this branch is a little bit strong in the image, you could potentially get rid of it if you want to. And again, this is all personal taste and depends on how much you want to play with or modify your images. And if it's for a contest or something, they may have rules around whether or not you can do this, but I'm just going to show you how eliminating that distraction might help your image a little bit. So what you do is you hit your Alt key and you click, and it samples something up here, and then you paint over it down here.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it just kind of gets rid of it. And there's a few different ways you can go about doing this. There's, like anything else, there's several tools that kind of get you to the same goal in Photoshop, but this is probably one of the quickest ones. and you can change the size of your brush, but you can get right in there and make that branch disappear. And we could do it with the other one as well. It's also good for dust spots and things like that. But I'll just get rid of these quickly, and you can see how that kind of, and I'd be a little more detailed about going into these corners here if it wasn't for the sake of time. And you could also, because it might look weird to have this branch going into the bird and not coming out anywhere, you could get rid of the ones down here as well. Let me zoom in a little bit closer because I've kind of overlapped my cloning here a little bit, but I don't want to get it into the breast of the bird. I just want to do the background. And again, this is a quickie because I'm, in a webinar. If I was doing this for real, I would spend a little more time on it. And then you can get rid of the rest. But I like the greenery that's in there. I think that adds something. Whoops. If you're not careful, you can clone in things other places. So we kind of got to be careful with that. I'll do it a little bit more down here. And again, I'm sort of bleeding into the belly of the bird because I'm doing this quickly. I would be more careful if we had more time. But there you go. So that just cleaned up things a little bit. So there's the before, which your eye kind of is like bird, and then it's like, okay, what's all this other stuff? And then after, it just simplified a little bit, yet I still left enough of this to kind of give it some context, which I like. I wouldn't get rid of all of that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah. Really nice job, and congrats on the new camera, and I'm so glad you're here, a part of us. I'm glad you joined tonight.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited.
Yeah, I hope you continue. I think it's great. And there's some comments as well. People like both of them. Yes, there's 2 white spots on the neck. We could clone those out if we wanted to. You can get as detailed as you want on that. But it's your art, so take it as far as you feel comfortable doing. But I really like the image, and it's of one of my favorite birds, so well done. All right, and then Caroline, you've got this beautiful eagle, immature eagle. Where did you get this one? Was this in Florida? I see pines. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, this was actually in Victoria, British Columbia. I'm actually from Canada, and I go down to Florida every year to visit friends who've retired down there.
Okay.
And this was taken last year, about a year ago this time.
Oh, nice. Wonderful. Well, I love it. And again,
pardon me, in BC, pardon me.
In BC. Okay. My dad used to live in BC. He used to live in oh my gosh, I just drew a blank at the name. He lived in Sicamous, BC for a while, and I used to love going up there. So but what I love about this, again, you've got the catch light. You've got beautiful light here. Really nice texture. Where you can see the edges of the feathers. Your eye loves that texture. And again, there's contrast here. So it makes my eye want to go, from here and then look at these feathers and kind of play around with this detail, and then these wonderful talons. And what's also nice is you even have the tail with some light on it, which can be tricky, right? Light comes from the top down, and getting the underside of a bird lit can be difficult. Pulling it up in post-processing can sometimes be challenging because it gets noisy, kind of speckly and some color, weird coloration if you try to pull up the shadows in post-processing. So you did a good job just the way the light was on this bird. I really, really like it. I also like the pine cones in here, kind of pull my eye in an interesting direction, and gives me some context here as well. And I don't know if you cropped this image or not, but you might even want to pull a little more of those pine cones in, or bring them in if there's a little bit of a twig afterwards or something. I'm not sure, but I like them that there's context in here. It gives me an idea of location, which was why I was like, I know there's pines in Florida, but I don't know if there's pines with those kinds of cones. So this is just a really nice image. I don't personally know if I would change anything. If I did, it might be to get rid of this stick down here. Keep this. I love this. Maybe get rid of this one and get rid of this little bit of a pine cone, because it just kind of pulls my eye here, and I kind of get stuck there. Okay. But I really like what you did here, and I think it's a lovely image and a really good submission. And so some of the comments that people are leaving, well done from Joel. And then Anna says, I like that he's all floofed up, nice golden colors as well. And I agree. It's a really nice picture. And immature eagles, sometimes people only want the adults, and I think immature eagles have some of the most beautiful coloring, and they're also bigger than the adults, and they have longer primary feathers because they don't have the strength to fly as much yet. So this kind of gives them that extra strength, and I think it's a great image of a great bird. And a young one. He looks to be about maybe in his second year, if I had to make a guess. So well done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if anybody doesn't know this in the group, bald eagles take about 5 to 6 years, roughly, to get their white plumage on their heads and tails. So the juveniles go through different iterations of molting each year, and their colors change each year until they finally get to that stage. So that's how you can tell approximately what year an eagle is. So good job, Carolyn.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Oh, yeah. This is great. All right, let's go forward. Darcy, hey, welcome to the group, Darcy. And Darcy, I met through a camping group a couple of years ago. We both have A-frame campers, and Darcy's from California, and we met in a group and clicked ever since. So Darcy, thanks for joining tonight. And Darcy spent, well, you can talk about it, Darcy, but you spent the summer in Alaska this past year. And where did you capture this image?
This was, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
This was actually in Hyder, Alaska.
Oh.
They have that, I call it combat camera taking. They have a fish viewing platform that every year the black bears and some grizzlies come and feed.
Oh.
And run. And this guy, they call him Dog Ear. He's there every year, and I haven't done anything to the picture other than crop a little bit of the foreground out because there was too much water in front of him. I call this my skiing bear, water skiing bear. So.
Yes, he does look like a water skiing bear. I love this splash going on here, the action. It's always fun when you can get a picture of an animal doing something as opposed to just standing there. And I love that. And of course, I love Alaska so much. It is just my favorite place on earth.
Yeah, so whenever, I think somebody's going to be there with you this summer too.
Yeah. So for the group, Darcy's going to be joining me in Alaska from my Magic of Alaska workshop, which I lead every summer, and she'll be going along, and I'm looking forward to it because we're going to have a good time. And there is, I'm not trying to brag, but I have done my research and I've done this workshop a million times, and there is no other workshop in Alaska that does as many different things as we do. So it's going to be fun, and I'm looking forward to having you come along and being a part of the magicians. So Magic of Alaska workshop, and once you go, you are officially a magician. And so I'm looking forward to that, Darcy. I appreciate you coming. So with the picture, a couple things that I absolutely love. I love this water. I love the action. I love that he looks like he's going to jump over this log. I love this water here. I love the fact that you can see the rocks in here and so forth. What I'm wondering is it looks like your focus point might have been actually in here as opposed to with the bear. This is looking a little bit more out of focus than this here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it in Photoshop and see if there's anything that we can do with it. It's hard to make a picture crisp that has a little bit of soft focus to it, but there might be some things that we can do. So let me try really quickly here. And again, if it doesn't work, all bets are off here, but I'm going to try. So if I go into filter and I could do a couple things, I can try shake reduction, which is a newer feature in Photoshop. It actually allows you to sort of try to fix the shake that might be, have occurred. Like if you're holding your camera and you had a little bit of jitter, sometimes that happens. And we can kind of play with these tools here, but I'm not going to do a whole lot with it. I was just kind of looking to see, what it might do, and I'll kind of put it over by the bear. It takes care of that a little bit, but I think your focus point may have been a little bit, and it's so hard because it all happens so fast. I think your focus point might have been a little bit in the foreground and not quite on the bear yet.
It was.
Okay. And that's hard. Like, I know when things are moving and moving so quickly, it's just a really hard thing to try to, deal with in a fast moving situation. I'm going to try a little unsharp mask, which takes some of the sharp things, or the unsharp things, and makes them sharp, but I'm not sure I'm seeing a whole lot of difference. There's the before, there's the after, and it's almost looking a little over sharpened at this point. It looks kind of crispy. And so I don't know if I love all of that added, but I just thought I'd try to see what it would look like. So we can work on the focus point, and I can help you with that in Alaska or beforehand. But what I would also suggest in the future, and I love that you got this water in here, is maybe we could give him a little bit more room to run. Now, this isn't going to be perfect because it's going to fill this in after the fact here, but a little bit more room to run so he doesn't look like he's running right up onto the edge of the image might help the overall look and feel of that image a little bit more. And but I think, I know you're just getting started with photography, and I think the fact that you were in Alaska doing this, getting in there with the bears, and in finding some of these subjects is awesome. And I think you have a good eye for seeing an opportunity and seeing the splashing and the skiing. I love that. And we can work on some of those other things with the focus and also some of the composition things as we go along. I like that you kept this in. I don't think it would look nearly as good to have taken that out. We use the rule of thirds as a guide, and that would be with the splash out of it, right? But I like that splash in there. So I think just giving him a little more room, if it's possible, so that he doesn't bump his nose up against the edge would help a little bit.
Okay.
So, and Martha must have been in Hyder because she wrote, Hyder is special. So it must have been a pretty cool place. Of all the places I've been in Alaska, that is one place I have not yet been, and it sounds like it's pretty awesome.
You need
Well,
to go.
it's a really different place.
Oh, then I'm going to add it to my list of places to go in Alaska. It sounds awesome.
Total of 100 people actually in town.
Well, that sounds like my kind of place.
Yes.
That sounds awesome. I love it. The other thing, Darcy, that you have to your advantage in this image is black bears are extremely difficult to photograph in the sun because their fur gets very reflective, and it can really mess with your exposure, and wet bears are even harder to photograph in the sun. So the fact that you had an overcast day was really, really opportunistic for you to get these shots, because I always cringe when it's bright sun and there's a black bear, because I just know that unless it's about 20 minutes after sunrise, it's going to be really, really difficult to photograph and get it to look right. So so it was a good choice of shooting on that day, these bears, because the overcast light works beautifully for black bears. Anything else you want to say on that one?
No.
All right, I'm going to move to the other one then. I think there were two. Oh yeah. This is awesome. This is just awesome. So Dall sheep, the young Dall sheep. Where were you for this one?
No, this is young bighorn.
Oh, young bighorns. My bad. I'm so sorry. I was thinking Alaska, so therefore I went to the Dall sheep right away. So these are bighorns. Where were you for these?
This was outside Banff, Canada.
Oh,
Banff
yeah.
National Park. And I took this one. I took like a zillion pictures this trip.
Probably still processing them.
Yeah. And this one has actually grown on me because I've showed it to other people and they're like, oh, we love it. And I'm
Yeah.
like going, but yeah, it just was an opportunity picture, and they posed for me. And I think I could have caught a little bit more in the eyes with the baby that's on top, but I think that's just comes with practice, I guess.
Well, it does, and on an overcast day, which works really well for this situation because you get the textures. You don't get, shooting white things on a bright day is really hard. So, and you, it looks like you have some lightness to the eyes. I pulled this into Photoshop just so we could play with it for a second. I absolutely love the composition of these two. Like, I'm jealous because I just love these two looking this way, the shape of their faces, the positioning, the backgrounds, right? The steep hill that they're on. It's amazing that these little guys can just scurry up and down at such an early age and do so seemingly effortlessly. So I'm going to play with this for a minute just to show you a couple things that you can pull that up. And all I'm going to do is play with white and black. And I've done this before in some of my other critiques. But I made a duplicate copy of your image, and I realize I'm working with a lower resolution version because, you know, you've uploaded it to my site and so forth. I just created a layer and I changed it to an overlay layer just to add, it almost allows you to add a little wash, and I'm only doing this at about, you know, 5 to 10% opacity, and I'm doing so with a really soft brush. I have my hardness down to 0 so that the brush itself is has really fuzzy edges, right? You don't want any hard lines with this. But if we go in, you can play up the catch lights in the eye even more. Yeah, you got the catch light, absolutely. But you could play that up a little bit more if you wanted to. And in this little one down here, let me see if there's much to work with here. It's a little bit dark, but we might be able to do something. 1 second.
He looks sad.
He's not sad. He's so thrilled to be photographed. It was his first photo shoot. But you could play up a little bit of the catch of the eyelid, and there's actually a bit of reflection going on there that you could play up, and it might make the eye pop a little bit more. And you can even, you don't want to do it too much or it can look kind of nuts, but you can pull up. Remember, your eye goes to the lightest things first and then the darkest things. So you could pull up a little bit around that eye, and we could do so with the other one. Oh, his is pretty good. You could play it up just a little bit more. Play up this face just a hair more, and I'm just lightening. He's got straw on his nose.
I was going to say, he's got something.
You could get rid of that too if you wanted to. That wouldn't be a big deal, right? We could, unless you like it that way, you know.
I think it's cute.
It's cute, so you can leave it. But I played up just a little bit of those faces, and I might do just a hair more on this one. Remember, your eye goes to the lightest things first and then the darkest. So if I am just making this a bit lighter without it really being noticeable, it allows people to see that face even more. And I'm doing this kind of quickly. You don't want to do it too much or it looks fake, but there's the after, there's the before.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So just, you know, try it. It depends, you know, your monitor may show it differently than mine, so I always have to have that disclaimer of everyone's monitor looks a little different. So it might look ridiculous on somebody's monitor. So, you know, you got to kind of be careful with that. But just something to think about. I love it, though. I really love this image. And then from there, I would just do little silly cleanup things like this little white speck down here of dirt, rocks, whatever it is. I just get rid of that. If there's other things that are really distracting, like there's this little rock here, we could get rid of that and it just cleans it up a little bit. There's a leaf behind the ear here that kind of, you know, doesn't necessarily have to belong. You could just kind of get rid of it a little bit. I'm doing this quickly, but you get the idea. So a couple little things like that would work nicely. And then I would take this rock down here and I would just tone it down a little bit. Not a lot, but just a little bit so it's not quite as bright. And I'm doing it quickly. It's turning a little blue on me. I might play with that a little bit. But if we darken it a little bit, it just, we know it's there, but you don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be kind of front and center. And if we put just a touch of a vignette around it, it just brings out the center of that image a little bit more. So here's the before, here's the after. Actually, there's the before. There's the before, sorry about that. And then here's the after. And I think you've got a gorgeous image here. I really, really love it. And I'm reading the comments here, and Carolyn Pick says it's very cute. Anna says, I want to put the subjects right in the middle with the square crop. Looks like a yin yang. Yeah, it does. It really, really does. And someone else who says, Martha says, what if I warmed it a bit? So let's try that. So I'm going to go and warm it up just a hair because we're on a cloudy day, which can turn things a little bit blue. And there's a few different ways you can warm things up. I'm going to use Adobe Camera Raw for just a moment. And I'm going to take my temperature and I'm going to slide it up just a little bit, maybe 5. See where we're at with that. All right, so there is the before as far as the color temperature goes. There's the original. There's the after. So the warming up a little bit. Darcy, what do you think?
I don't like the butt on the top one once you warmed it up.
Okay,
Yeah,
did it get a little light for you? A little too white?
Yeah, too light.
So let's try toning that down just a hair with the black. I think I'm at pure black. Nope, I'm not. That's why it turned blue. All right, we'll try toning that down just a hair. How does that look on your end, Darcy?
That looks better. That looks better.
Yeah. And they're going to have a little bit of a white rump because that's what they have. But I agree, your eye, when you talk about when your eye goes somewhere, it goes to the brightest spots first. You know, that can tone that down just a little bit more. Good call on that. Someone else said, what if we made it a black and white? We could try that. My concern might be that this stuff would start to have the same value as this, but let's try it. So if I go into, I'm going to do this quickly, go into black and white. Whoops, there we go.
I got enough butt shots this trip. They would not come around and look at me for anything.
Aw. It's hard. The animals, they know what's going on, and butt shots are usually because they're, you know, thrown away to protect. So I'm just playing with some of the color tones in here and pulling some things down a little bit so we could, you know, play with that and see what you like. But black and white does kind of work, and I thought maybe it might not, but you know what, honestly, it does, and you could play with it a little bit more. But I really like this, Darcy. That's a winner. Congratulations on that one. Cool shot. All right, I'm going to move forward here just so we can get through everyone's. Mark. Hey, first of all, Mark, good to see you on the line here. Glad you're here. I love this oak leaf with the ice crystals. It's so pretty. And you know, it's interesting because the leaf is the same color as the wood behind it, but this really works, and kind of the diagonal line here really works because it's a different direction than the wood here, and I like that a lot. I also like that the leaf is sitting on this kind of, I don't know, broken part of the wood, and this whole thing really, really works for me. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to put it in Photoshop here just so that we can play if anybody has any ideas on it. But I'm really liking this image. I love textures and stuff like this, so this really appeals to me. I will create a duplicate layer here real quickly. And Mark, thanks for submitting. It's good to see you here. So the first thing that I'm going to try, because remember your eye loves contrast, so I'm going to go in here and I don't normally use Dodge, but I'm going to, and I'm going to do so with highlights. And I'm going to play up these ice crystals a little bit more. And we're going to go around the edges, and I might even play up some of the veining here, but I'm going to go around and just play up those ice crystals because this is the icing on this cake, these crystals, and I want to see them even better. So dodging will lighten something for those who don't use a lot of Photoshop. Burning will darken something. And it goes back to those terminology from the film developing days in the darkroom when you did, when you printed a picture, you could lighten or darken things by dodging the paper from the light for a certain amount of time. That would prevent the light from hitting the film paper and therefore keep it lighter. The longer the exposed light hit the film paper, the darker the thing would become. So if you kind of prevent it, it's just like sunburn. If I prevent the sun from hitting my skin, I don't get burned. If I let the sun sit there for a long time, I get burned. And it's the same kind of thing. So we can dodge or burn and lighten or darken the image. So I'm just playing that up a little bit more, and we could even do it with a little overlay layer here, two of my favorite tools to use. to even play this up to a greater extent and go in with a real small brush and play that up a little more. I think that would be really pretty. You could even get in real tight here and lighten up this veining a hair more, and I'm doing it quick. I would normally spend more time on it, but I like these veins. You could also try a little bit of clarity. That might work. Just giving you some ideas here. But this frost is absolutely yummy, so I love playing with it here. That would be one of my recommendations. So here is the before, and then here's the after. So it just pumped that up a little bit more, and you could continue to play with that if you want to. But I really like the image, and I love your composition on it. I wouldn't change a darn thing with the composition or anything else. I'd just say play up the frost just a hair more. Stephen says, hey, what about, oh, you're welcome, Martha. So might selectively lighten the leaf and add more texture to it. Yes, we can try that too. And then Stephen said a black and white. So let me try lightening the leaf first. So I'm going to go into Camera Raw for a minute. You can use Lightroom or whatever else you like, but I just find this to be easy. So I'm going to go and I am going to just, I'm going to pull up shadows a little bit, and I'm going to pull up exposure just a little bit, and then paint in here a little. And that would lighten that leaf. And again, we can try it, and if we don't like it, we can go to plan B here. And I'm doing this very gently, but once I paint it in, we can play with the light some more. I love, by the way, the light that's on this leaf, these subtle highlights here and the shadows. It's really beautiful. All right, so I'm doing a quick job of this. Again, if I was doing this forever, I would, permanently, I would spend more time. I can pull up the exposure. I'm also wondering what a little clarity might do here. Let's see. No, I don't like that clarity so much. How about dehaze? And then I can pull up the highlights a little bit more. There's a point where it starts to look a little artificial, so I'm not, I don't want to do that too much, but let's see what happens here. All right, so there's the before. There's the after. Just makes it maybe pop a little bit more, but you can play with this for sure. I absolutely love this image, Mark, and we're just doing things that kind of give you some ideas. You don't have to go with any of them. Every artist's vision is different for different reasons. And I'll also say again that my monitor could be different than yours, and you might see something on your end that's like, ooh, I don't like the way that looks, and it can be a difference between how our monitors are calibrated. So, if you looked at this on your phone, it was going to look different again. So something to think about. But yeah, I like these ice crystals. This is just a pretty, pretty moment, and I love it. Okay, I'm going to move forward here. And Mark, if you have anything to say, feel free and chime in as well. I'm moving along just to make sure I've captured everybody's images in the time frame that we have, but feel free and add or comment as you want to. And then here's another one. Mark, you always have such interesting images, and this is so cool. So I love your choice of depth of field where you've got the bison in focus, but you also have the riverbank and then the trees and everything also in focus. I think that was a really smart choice because these trees are just, I want to touch them all. They're all perfectly flocked. Really good choice on your how you framed the image. The fact that you left a little bit of sky up here and it's not pure white sky, really smart. I like that I can see the tops of the trees, but the sky really doesn't have any story to it. So I love that you left a little bit there. I definitely recommend that, but you didn't leave tons and tons. That was really smart. And then you've got these neat layers of the snow. And then it goes into the river. You've got this gorgeous leading line taking me through the image. And then the buffalo right where it counts, which is in that, for the rule of thirds, if you will. And I will just demonstrate that in Photoshop here really quickly. I don't really need to process too much here, but I just wanted to show folks if they're newer to this concept, what I mean by the rule of thirds. So, so there's the image, And if we put a tic-tac-toe grid over that image, there we go. Now you can see this grid, and usually where a really important part of the image is, you're going to want to put that in this quadrant, or this one, or this one, or this one. Usually the most important part of the main subject goes in that area, just for some added oomph, if you will. It just looks more visually pleasing most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. And you've got that bison really placed well in that image. I really, really like this quite a bit. Yeah, someone said, Anna, you said beautiful S-curve, and it is. It's just gorgeous through there. It was nice of you, Mark, to make that river, you know, so that it worked in that way. Mark, anything you want to say or any comments of your own? And I also am seeing from Kurt and Joel. Joel says, like, love the position of the bison. I do too. And Kurt Bowman, hey, good to have you on the line as well, my friend. Good to see you here. And you said you like the curve in the river and the bison is placed perfectly in the frame. Okay, no problem, Mark, that you don't have a mic. Typing is fine. Caroline loves the composition as well. I think this is a real winner, especially from the composition perspective. And I really like it. I think it's a beautiful image. There's not really anything that I would personally do to it. I love it the way it is. So yeah, you did get lucky with the trees and the snow and the river. Yeah, for sure. And what a beautiful scene to see. Were you in Yellowstone with this, or? Yep, Yellowstone. Okay. And then Martha, how far above or below the quadrant? You know, it doesn't have to be perfect, in my personal opinion. I think his placement is pretty good. If he were to put it up here a little bit more, he would have more foreground, and I don't know that that would have helped, because the foreground isn't very interesting, and he did a good job of leaving enough of it there so that you know there is some. But I think if he would have moved the camera down more so that the buffalo was here, even though it doesn't look like much, it would have added more to the foreground, and there's not really anything there. You know, if there were some interesting shrubs or, you know, another portion of the river, then maybe we could talk. But I think he did a good job the way it is. Yeah, and Kurt said, yes, then he would cut the tree line, which is also very true. And I love this right here. This distance is perfect. Enough sky to know it's there. And the sky isn't overexposed, which is sometimes a problem. Yeah, you would have cut the tree line, and I think the tree line is beautiful the way it is. And this is, by the way, a perfect example. When I talk about your eyes go to the brightest things and then the darkest things, and where there's points of contrast, they go there first. This is a perfect example of that. So overall, the image is white. So now your eye is going, yep, okay, where's the contrast? And if you haven't noticed already, your eye loves to hang out in this portion of the river. And then, of course, it instantly sees the bison, because the bison is so starkly different from the surrounding snow. It's just a really, really nice example of your eye finding contrast and what it's looking for. Well done. And Martha says, I'm sitting here nodding. We can't see. No, I can't, but I can appreciate that. So yeah, well done, Mark, and good to see you here. It's nice to see some new faces this week. So all right, let me see here if there are. I'm going to refresh this because there may be more that someone has submitted. I think there are more. Yes. So Darcy, Kurt, I'm going to go in with yours now. Thanks for submitting. And oh, Kurt, this is really interesting. Wow. All right, so you got to tell me about this. I don't know if you have a mic, or if not, you can type. Go ahead. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so I guess my mic works.
It does.
No, that was this was on Highway 1 in California a few years ago. I went there with a couple of friends on Christmas, and we decided to travel from San Francisco up to Eureka. And we were just driving in the car, and fortunately, I turned around after we went through this tunnel of trees. If I wouldn't have turned around, I would have never seen this.
Oh my gosh.
Rays coming through, and so I yelled at my friend to stop the car, and you know, we got out and shot as quickly as we could, because, you know, we were afraid we were going to lose the light, because, you know, the light changes just a little bit, you're going to lose a scene.
Yeah.
So I actually handheld it, which is not something I normally would do in a landscape image.
Yeah,
And
but
we kept walking down the road, and I kept trying to wave her to move, and she wouldn't move. It was kind of fun.
it is. I've never seen an image like this before. It reminds me of like a secret garden. Like it almost looks, and this isn't meant to be negative. It almost looks fake. It's so flippin' cool. Like this is very unusual,
Yeah.
and I would think you could use this. A stock photography company or travel bureau would love to license this from you, in my personal opinion. It's beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. Um, yeah, these rays coming through are just stunning. So, how did you process it?
I actually do most of my work in Lightroom. I just find it easier and quicker to work in. So really all I did was I cropped it a little bit. There was a sign that was on the left-hand side, and I didn't want to clone it because I wanted to enter it in a couple of contests. So
Yeah,
I tightened it up a little bit, and then just really brought up the shadows and some of the blacks, and
yeah,
then even brought up some of the highlights, and just
yeah.
obviously did a little bit of dodging and burning here and there, and that's pretty much all I did, and then sharpened it.
It's really interesting. Have you tried this in black and white as well?
I haven't. Didn't even think about looking at this in black and white, and that's actually an interesting take on it. I knew
I'd
you
be
did something I didn't think of. I knew you would.
No, I mean I like it the way it is because the colors, they're sort of, you get the backlight so colors can get, I don't know if muted is the right word, but they change in backlight
Yeah.
versus, front or side light. But I'd be curious what this looks like in black and white. And the thing is if I do it quickly in post, it wouldn't be what I would like if I do this, and I can try really quickly here, but it's not going to be the same as if you actually spent time processing it in black and white, because black and white, for those who haven't done a lot of it, it isn't just a matter of slapping on the black and white conversion. There's usually a lot of playing around that you do with a black and white image to get the right recipe and the tonality that you need. But just for giggles, I'm just curious what this would look like, if you don't mind, Kurt. And this is just
No,
such an interesting
I don't
shot.
mind at all. And I actually had to fiddle a lot with this on the shadows, just because I didn't want to bring it up too much where I created too much noise in the image. And
Yeah,
obviously, because of the light coming through, and it was not an easy image to actually expose. It was actually
yeah,
difficult to expose, so I had to play around a little bit with highlights. Um, that's
well,
actually pretty cool looking.
yeah. It is really cool looking, and I'm thinking we
Makes
need
it
to
look so
play.
easier.
It does. Now you can license it out for Halloween. See, I'm making you all kinds of money here.
I know.
Um, I'm just like, depending on what color channels you're playing with, I suspect the blues are really gonna, like,
Yeah.
I'm pulling down the blues at the moment.
How about the
Pulling down and it almost just creates a vignette with that. And then I'm wondering if we didn't play with, like, let's see here. I kind of like that a little bit brighter. I'm really thinking that you would go in with some detail and pull some of these highlights up on just a few of the trees a little bit or something like that. But I'm just curious what it would look like as a black and white. What happens if we pulled some of the shadows down?
This is one I'd probably spend an hour at least on.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
really white, just because I agree with you. I think you got to really, an image like this would be cool to be more selective.
Yep. A lot of pixel peeping and some very fine details of just bringing up light and shade. This is just a really wicked cool image. What a cool opportunity. And, sunbeams are always those things that you see, and it's really hard to capture them well in photography. Like, I find they don't pick up in an image like they do when you're seeing them with your eyes, in my personal experience. And it had to be just ridiculous to see this, for this much of it to come through in an image. You must have been like, when you hear all the, what is it, that song, with all the angels, like, oh, like, that's what this reminds me of.
It was a pretty cool sight to see, pretty ominous feeling.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is
trying to give it as much justice as I could. And I still didn't even give it justice. I mean, if you had been there, it was jaw dropping. It was really pretty cool.
I can't even imagine. And then I would have been like, where do I put my car? Because, there's nowhere to park it. So, and then I would have been like dying, I'm pretty sure, trying to photograph. This is awesome. Really neat image. And this tree right back in here, like, it just, how lucky that all these trees were here like this. And I don't even know if this is in existence anymore with all the fires that everybody's had, but this is
Yeah, I
beautiful.
sure hope so. It's about this is about an hour north of San Francisco,
Oh,
so probably maybe not there anymore.
ah, this is stunning. Just beautiful. That area of California is so beautiful anyway. Kurt, I love this. This is beautiful. Thank you so much for sending that in. There isn't another thing I would change. I really love the way you did it. And if you decide to play with black and white, send me a sample. I'd love to see that.
I'm totally gonna play with it. I really appreciate the idea a
I
lot.
think the color works for me, but the black and white just gives it it's a different feel, but I'd be curious what you do with it. And
Yeah, it makes it
yeah,
a completely different image. So
it, it does. That's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful.
thanks.
I'm going to go on to your next. Oh, so white pelican here, and I love that the feather is going right through the eye. I think that's just awesome. It's a little extra, like a little extra peek. He's barely peeking out as it is. And then the other thing, for those who may not know, when you've got stuff in the foreground here, getting the eye in focus is really challenging because your camera would want to focus on these feathers or this feather or these feathers or anything else, or the head back here. So getting this eye in focus, trickier than it may look, and you did a beautiful job with that. And the exposure on this is spot on. So one thing, I'm going to pull this into Photoshop just to show you what I mean by white. One of the things that's challenging, especially with newer photographers, is seeing when white is too white for an image. So if I paste this in here, I'm going to show you, if I take a sample of white, it's really not going to be pure white. And a lot of times, and it's a mistake we've all made as we go through our journey with photography. But a lot of times when we see something like a white pelican, an egret, a wedding dress, whatever it is, and we photograph it, people can overexpose it, and our eye doesn't necessarily notice it right away, but the more discerning you are with your images, the more you'll see it. So if I take a sample, right now this is set to pure white right here. If I take a sample of different portions of this bird that we all know and believe is white, look at the top half of this and see how no matter what I pick, it's always some shade of grayish, right? It might be a warm gray, but everything I pick here, we can look at the brightest spots in this bird, and it's still some shade of gray. Now, my eye looks at this and says, yep, there's white pelican, but none of this, even the very, very brightest spots that I'm picking, it's close to white, but it's not white. And that's a sign of exposure being really well done, because on a poorly exposed image, and Kurt, I'm going to use your image as an example for just a second here, but if I had a poorly exposed image, I'm going to brighten this up, all of a sudden this stuff turns pure white and there's no detail there. So if I were to take my paint sample over here, it's going to be pure white. See that? And if I were to print that, all that we would see is the paper underneath. And so I'm going to get rid of that for a minute. I just had to use that as an example. Whoops, get out of here. So the way you did your exposure on this is just spot on, and it's something I really look forward and picky about. So for those on the line, if you're photographing white birds, you're going to want to work with that exposure and potentially even underexpose it a little bit in order to make sure that the whitest parts of the birds aren't overexposed and just pure white, because that can be a negative. But I love this. I love the detail, the focus, the composition spot on. So if I put the crop here, and we talked about rule of thirds, the most interesting part of this image is right in that PowerPoint. Really well done from my perspective. I really love the whole darn thing, and pelicans are one of my favorite birds anyway. So this is beautiful, just really beautiful shot.
Thanks. It's not my usual image. That's why I wanted to submit it. It's quite a bit different than what I normally do.
What are you usually doing, Kurt? Landscapes?
No. Mostly all birds and wildlife, but
that's what I thought. I was like, well, maybe there's a side to you I don't know.
No, it's much more of an action and behavioral type of photographer. I mean, if you look at I love action images. I like images that show motion. So to show something that doesn't have a lot of motion to it, that's kind of outside of my thinking normally. But I'm trying to like step outside of my thinking quite a bit more. I just want to and different thoughts and ideas.
Yes.
We wanted some feedback on this and see what you thought.
And
Between this and a goose, I have the goose. It's a pano with a feather that he's preening. That's interesting. I almost submitted that because that's also very different like this. But
well, I like this, and I like that you're exploring new things. And for those of you that don't know, I was in Bosque del Apache last week, and Kurt happened to be there as well. So we finally got to meet, even though Kurt lives in Arizona now, we finally got to meet, on the trail, so to speak, in New Mexico, which was fun. And Kurt does some killer bird shots. So when you were saying this isn't what I usually do, and I was like, but you usually do birds, I'm thinking there's a whole other side to Kurt I don't know. But I get what you're saying now of kind of doing this more, artistic, not that your other images aren't, they're gorgeous, but and if any of you are on the line, I would recommend checking out his page, Kurt Bowman. He just does beautiful bird photography. So, but I love this. I just, everything about it is really special, and the exposure is perfect. I love the way you cropped it and also did more of this pano style feel as opposed to just leaving it to the conventions of the, the rectangle in your camera, so to speak. I'm a fan of doing things a little bit different when it comes to cropping. So nicely done.
thanks.
All right, I know we're a little bit over time, but I'm going to keep going here because there's a few more images that were submitted. Oh, Stephen, yes, I remember this image. Stephen, you and I were talking about this a few months ago. This is a beautiful image of these bears, and good to have you on the line, Stephen, by the way. It's nice to talk with you.
Hey, thanks. I'm here.
And Stephen and I are headed up to Brooks Brooks Lodge and up in that area next September. So just less than a year now, finally, Kurt, or excuse me, Stephen. So I'll look forward to that. So anyway, this is just lovely. I love the framing of it with the trees. I love the action with the bears. You played with this a little bit, didn't you? We were talking about this image before, so tell me what you did.
Yes, in the middle there was a branch that was kind of going over one of the cubs' heads. And I was able to get that out of there, and I was kind of trying to get some of the bright spots down a little bit more. And brighten up the faces of the bears a little bit.
I like what you did. I know I don't have the before, with me at the moment, but I really like the way you process this, and the bear's faces, it gets me right where I need to be. The fact that you have this contrast right here and it defines this bear, separates it from this one. I really like it. And, in the water, I can see the splashing, but the white of the water doesn't take my eye away so much that it's competing with the faces. I think you just did a really special job on this, and I just love it. I'm going to look at some of the comments people are making here. Let's see here. Kurt, he says he likes how the trees frame the bears. I do too. Anna, ditto on the framing of the image and great light, which I agree. You don't, if you're just looking at this picture, you might not think about it, but when there's all these trees hanging overhead, it's so easy to have dappled light that creates all these ugly shadows that get exaggerated when you take the image. Like our eye doesn't see them the way our camera does. And so all of a sudden you get these polka dotted looking animals because of the dappled light through the trees. And however this was lit and whatever you did, it worked so that it's not so dappled.
It was actually nice to actually have the sun out too, because usually there, especially in the fall, you don't get a lot of sunlight because it's overcast most of the time being out there on the peninsula.
Yes.
So, with the sun being out, and I don't know, it was just lucky because we had to back up that creek that flows into the river.
Oh, yeah.
And actually, if you look past the bears, even though it's blurry, that's actually Brooks Falls there in the background.
Oh, right here. I see what you're saying. Yeah, so you're right out in front of it.
Yes.
Wow, that's very cool.
So it was
very, very cool.
Yeah, this was a lucky shot. I mean, there was a series of shots, and the rest of them were really underexposed.
Yeah, yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? I mean, in the sun, and if you get top-down light, it can be a really, really challenging thing. And middle of the day, the backs of the bears will be light, and the underneath is going to be so dark it turns black, and it just then they get raccoon eyes going on, and
Yeah.
it's really challenging to photograph on a sunny day in Alaska. I almost welcome, except for very early morning and late at the end of the day, I welcome an overcast day more than a sunny day because, like in the summer when I teach my workshops, when we have pure sun and no clouds to filter, it can make for a long day because, it's like, okay, it's still sunny. Of course, you get the 4-hour magic hours, but still. Kurt had a suggestion. He said, I might consider taking a very tiny sliver off of the left side to move the bears a little bit more to the left, and
Okay.
then you'd have a little bit more perceived room for them to be walking.
It looks like there's also just the tiniest little like out of focus foliage on the bottom left corner.
Oh yeah, right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would get rid of that also at the same time.
That's
Okay.
true. That's true. Kurt, never mind my last sentence. I'm tired of losing my mind. Hey, we've all been there. No
like,
worries.
over here, but
But it's a cool shot to see these two bears together, and it's just really neat with the way the tree frames everything. And I love that Brooks Falls is in the background. It gives me an idea of what we'll be doing in a year from now. And if in a year from now I go with Stephen and I don't come back, well, you know what happened because we're out hiking with the bears. But so either that or I finally decided to move to Alaska. So did I say Kurt? I meant Stephen. I'm so sorry. Apparently I'm losing my mind too. All right, I'm going to move forward here. Stephen, Mr. Moose, so tell me about this one.
That was taken at Rocky Mountain National Park just this
Oh,
past September. And I did a little editing. There was a lot more grass. If I put the original up, there was a lot more grass in front of it. So I kind of tried to get rid of some of the grass that was blocking them just to.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, I know it's the rule of thirds, I guess, is thrown out the window in this one. It's right smack dab, at you. But a lot of the people I look at my photos kind of like seeing it right there.
Yeah. And it's not like the head is directly in the middle. You've got it a little left of center. If it was right in the middle, this side would feel very empty and it would feel very lopsided. It still feels very balanced to me. And that's part of the, when people talk about rule of thirds, a lot of it has to do with balance. And this doesn't feel like, I always say if you put it on I know there's a technical term and I can't think of it right now, but if you put it on a teeter-totter, right? If I put this on a triangle, which way would it fall? To the left or to the right? And to me, I think it's pretty well balanced with this face being here. I think you can pull up the eyes a little bit just to give you more opportunity to connect with it. And I've shown this before, so I'll try to make it quick, but I think it could add a little bit of oomph to your image. So let's try it really quickly. And I'm going to create that overlay layer. I always like to try to make sure people can connect with the eyes without them looking like, they're on a scary horror movie. And you may have done some of this already, Stephen. So
I did it some, but the more I was taking it up, though, the less
you liked it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I do it, maybe we're going to be in the same situation, but I could play up those highlights a little bit. And it looked like you had done a little bit of it and done it well. So forgive me because I might do this and then we might not like it at all. And then I'm going to actually do some black just to kind of define a little bit of it, get a little bit of contrast. And again, I'm doing it quick and I'm on a low resolution image. So bear with me because I just copied this quickly. But we can play with that, a little bit of black back with the pupils. And then we can try the same thing on the other side. And I think you did I can see that you did this. And so what I'm doing is probably, it might be overkill. Let's see. I'm doing it super quick. I'll do the before and the after here. There's the before, there's the after.
Oh, yeah, that looks a little bit better.
It punches it a little bit, but I think you already did a lot. So, you know, because it's hard with dark fur animals, their eyes tend to be dark. It's hard to kind of connect with their eyes when everything is dark. And so that's just a little trick that I do to sometimes just get you in there. But I like the image. I might suggest, just because this wood back here is pretty bright compared to the antlers, just tone it down a hair. And I'm doing it on my overlay layer, which might then therefore make it look saturated. So we might have to go in and burn down some highlights or midtones. Let's see here if I take highlights first and just tone those down. And I might go in and desaturate that a little bit more, just because it is, you know, when you darken something, sometimes it tends to make it look more saturated. So I can pull that color down so it matched. And I'm doing it kind of quickly. Again, I'd play more with it if I had more time, and I wouldn't let this halo around here exist either, because I'm doing it so quickly. But there's the original. There's the other one. Again, I would play with this some more, but you get the idea. And I think you could almost, let's see here. I think you could almost play up some of these highlights a little bit more just to get you connecting with the face. But again, these are subtle things you can try, you know, playing with the ears a little bit just to pull it up without it looking fake. Even the highlights on the antlers here. But I love these antlers. Like, you can tell it wasn't too awfully long ago that he lost the velvet. It's still a little bloody and jagged, and you know, so
Yeah,
pretty.
he was following a cow around.
Oh.
And we kind of distracted him for a couple of seconds, and he actually looked our way, and that's when I got this shot.
Interesting.
Then he just started following that cow around, and they were doing a loop. They were doing it all day long.
I love it. I love it. It's amazing how patient these guys are. Hey, Stephen, one thing I would do is just get rid of that little twig right there, because it was just on the edge. And I would, you know, maybe some of these little ones right here, but super cool image, and tack sharp where it needed to be. And I don't think your composition's bad at all. Let me see what anybody else said. I like the head turn with the moose looking at the viewer. It gives more impact. I totally agree. I'm all about the impact there, and I agree 100%, Kurt, with that. Stephen, nice job on that.
Hey, thanks.
Let me scoot forward here. All right, I'm going to see what ones I've missed, because I think some folks have submitted things since I was here last, but I'm going to make sure I've covered everything. I think that's it. Did anybody else submit something that I'm missing? I'll go back and refresh one more time here. I think we've got them all. So, all right, I'm going to let everyone go for tonight. We were about 20 minutes over, but I hope this was helpful. It's recorded, so I'll publish it in, you know, probably tomorrow when it's done. It's done with its processing part. But I just want to say thanks, everyone. I hope this was helpful. I hope you had fun. Any final questions before we go for tonight?
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you, guys. I couldn't do it without you and your images, so thank you. You're welcome, everyone. Have a really wonderful evening, and I will see you next month. I'll be posting the next dates very shortly. And just thanks again, and I hope everyone has a really wonderful holiday. Take good care, everyone.